After finding success with commercials and television appearances, Jim Henson became a household name when he and his group of talented puppeteers became a part of Sesame Street. However, children's entertainment wasn't really his goal. Jim's son Brian has said before that originally Jim's material was more targeted at an older audience, although it was never really extremely vulgar. Even during all of his early pre-Sesame Street success, Jim tried to develop a puppet series that was aimed towards a more adult audience, which was finally picked up in 1976 and became what is now known as The Muppet Show, which would go on to become one of the most popular television series of its time, lasting for 5 seasons. But before it was picked up, Jim put together 2 pilots for the series, the first of which was centered on Valentine's Day. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not really a huge lover of Valentine's Day, but in keeping up with my recent seasonal retrospectives of nostalgic and obscure content, I decided to look back on the first of 2 pilots for The Muppet Show, The Muppets Valentine Show. I'm also going to talk about how it eventually evolved into The Muppet Show. Of course, the host of The Muppet Show is Kermit the Frog, but in the 2 pilots, the hosts are new original characters. For this one, our host is a hip Muppet by the name of Wally. In the middle of all of the traditional Muppet craziness, Wally tries to write the script for the show, but has a hard time describing love. Mildred Huxtetter, a Muppet introduced in this special, helps Wally out by stating that love is a simple thing, leading to the first musical number, titled simply, Love is a Simple Thing, with all Muppets in the special performing solos with their takes on love, with another new character named George the Janitor even calling it more fun than a puppet show. In the middle of the number, Wally introduces the special and guest Mia Farrow. The number ends with Crazy Donald causing an explosion. A lot of the Muppets in this special were brand new characters, although not many of them quite took off. Crazy Donald, however, would continue to be used afterwards, but he was renamed Crazy Harry. The name Donald was after Don Saleen, Jim Henson's primary puppet builder at the time, and was often the creator of their special effects, such as explosions. While Wally continues to struggle with how to describe love, he decides to ask for advice from George the Janitor. When Wally asks George what comes to his mind when he thinks about love, George answers, Mops. But Mildred feels as if there's more to love than just mops. Sweethearts! Hugging! Kissing! But then she gets interrupted by an old man Muppet named Brewster, who tells everyone, with age comes wisdom, and with wisdom comes grace. But he falls asleep before he can finish talking. Mildred tries to wake Brewster up to ask what comes after Grace, and when Brewster finally does wake up, he says that Grace was great at hugging and kissing, thinking that Mildred is Grace. Fun fact, Brewster was the first ever Muppet performed by Dave Goelz. Many of us Muppet fans know Dave best, of course, as the puppeteer for Gonzo, Dr. Bunsen Honeydew, and Zoot, among others on The Muppet Show. This was before any of those characters were introduced. In addition, Dave also built the Brewster puppet. Brewster kind of reminds me of Professor Hastings from Sesame Street, you know, falling asleep when they're in the middle of talking and not having any idea what they're talking about when they wake up. The character of Brewster returned in the second Muppet Show pilot Sex and Violence, and for The Muppet Show. Dave still performed the character, but the voice was changed from a stereotypical old man voice to a calmer voice. But he was usually known as the Wise Man or the Guru, still maintaining his wisdom, but the falling asleep gag was dropped. Anyway, Wally tries to show George the true meaning of love by using Mildred and Brewster as an example, but George brushes it off, very facetiously calling it dynamite, which gets the attention of Crazy Donald. We all know that the running gag with Crazy Harry, or in this case Crazy Donald, is that if you say anything related to explosions, that's his call. Upon hearing George say dynamite, Crazy Harry comes in and asks, "Did somebody say dynamite?" Wally and George insist that they never said dynamite, but the more they insist, the more they say the word, tempting Crazy Harry to blow a hole into the wall. All of the Muppets go to check out the commotion, while Kermit discusses his take on love, but none of the other Muppets are really listening to him. He manages to get the attention of a long-nosed furry Muppet named Droop, saying to him, "Boy, can I tell you about love!" Droop isn't really interested in hearing Kermit talk about love, but to shut him up, he says to Kermit, "Okay, tell us about it." But Kermit claims that he doesn't want to talk about it, which makes the other Muppets really happy. But instead, Kermit decides to sing about it, much to the annoyance of everyone else. Kermit signals a group of frogs out of the piano for the next musical number, Froggy Went A-Courtin'. That's the classic song in which the frog protagonist asks for his love interest Miss Mousie's hand in marriage. Kinda goes like, Froggy went a-courtin' and he did right, uh-huh, uh-huh. Froggy went a-courtin' and he did right, a bunch of posies by his side, uh-huh, uh-huh. However, in this version of the song, Miss Mousie has another admirer, a very large mouse who Kermit fights. But in the end, Miss Mousie takes Droop because of his motorcycle. Even back then, girls always picked the bad boy. This was before Miss Piggy was introduced, and by The Muppet Show, she became Kermit's main admirer. Miss Mousy continued to appear in Muppet productions from time to time after this, but rarely ever played a major role. There was one episode where Kermit performed the opening number with Miss Mousy, and Miss Piggy was so annoyed by that she joined Statler and Waldorf to heckle. There's another song very similar to Froggy Went a Courtin', but it's A Frog He Would a Wooing Go. It goes like, a frog he would a wooing go, hey ho, says Rolly, a frog he would a wooing go, whether his mother would let him or no, with the roly-poly, gammon and spinach, hey ho, says Anthony Rolly. And the dynamic is the same. Frog asks for a mouse's hand in marriage, and that as well was performed on The Muppet Show, but by Rolf and Sam the Eagle. The song makes Mildred emotional as the frogs head back to the frog pond inside of the piano. Seeing the water splash, Mildred looks to the viewer and says, "No wonder the stupid thing's out of tune." Finally, guest star Mia Farrow arrives and is welcomed very warmly by all of the Muppets. Brewster mentions that Mia has come all the way from England, which, ironically, is where The Muppet Show ended up being shot, and Mildred offers her tea. And Mia offers Mildred crumpets. Droop mentioned that they used to have a crumpet, but it died. When Mia sits down, Mildred offers her a cookie, but Droop recognizes it as the crumpet that died. But the crumpet responds, "No, I didn't." Droop is very happy to see the crumpet is still alive until Mildred throws it for the Muppet's dog, Rufus. Rufus is another pre-existing Muppet used in this special. He was first used in Jim Henson's pilot The Land of Tinkerdy, which never aired, but he was reused in the special Hey Cinderella and on various episodes of Sesame Street in its first season. As Mildred and Mia catch up, Mia reveals that she's pregnant. Mildred comments, "Some girls have all the luck." Mia claims that it takes a little more than luck just as Wally arrives to give Mia a Valentine card from Thog, another pre-existing Muppet who was reused for this special. Thog was introduced in the 1970 Christmas special The Great Santa Claus Switch as a part of the main villain Cosmo Scam's henchmen. Thog would continue to be used on The Muppet Show, more often in sketches and in the opening theme. Thog's card to Mia reads, "Be My Valentune," as she and Thog meet for the next musical number, Real Live Girl, which Thog begins to sing after Mia kisses him. A very similar number was done on The Muppet Show and on the Julie Andrews Hour, with Thog performing "Oh Babe, What Would You Say" as a duet with Julie Andrews, and then on The Muppet Show with Kay Ballard. While Mia continues to spend time with the Muppets, Rufus seems to really enjoy her company. Mia tells Rufus that she's interested in having a dog, but isn't sure of what kind to get. Because Mia lives in the country, she at first thinks that maybe a watchdog would be a nice dog to have around, so Rufus shows her how he can help out. Mia then thinks about having a dog to enter in dog shows, so Rufus does a little dance for her. While Mia finds that amusing, she actually was referring to a very aristocratic dog, so Rufus shows her how dignified he can be. Mia goes back to her living in the country, thinking that a greyhound would make a nice dog, and Rufus imitates a bus driver. Get it? Greyhound? Like the bus? Even though she finds Rufus funny, Mia decides that she doesn't want a dog, unless it could be a dog like Rufus, as she sings, "Believe me if all those endearing young charms" to him. Because of the calmness of the previous number with Mia and Rufus, the lights had dimmed, much to George's dismay as he trips on something and shouts, "Blast!" But just then, who should appear but Crazy Donald? As the lights come back on, Crazy Donald asks, "Did somebody say blast?" After setting off another explosion, George has the Muppets chase after Crazy Donald. But the only one not involved in the chase is Wally, who still is trying to figure out what to say about love. This time Wally decides to focus on love on other planets as we head to the planet Kuzbane, where Kermit the Frog, in an outfit very similar to his news reporter outfit from Sesame Street, is reporting on the mating ritual between the male Kuzbanian and female Kuzbanian, known as the Gallio Hoop Hoop. The way that it works is that the male Kuzbanian howls to the female Kuzbanian, who responds by laughing very loudly. The male Kuzbanian emphasizes his passion through a series of stunts, which capture the heart of the female Kuzbanian, and by twitching him on the head with her nose, she signals him to do the Gallio Hoop Hoop. The two get a running start from further away, and upon crashing into each other, their babies are born. The planet Kuzbane was named after the town of Coos Bay, Oregon, and would be often used after on The Muppet Show, where we meet many other Kuzbanian creatures, such as the Kuzbanian Foob, the Kuzbanian Spooble, the Murdladops, and the Fazoobs. The Gallio Hoop Hoop sketch would later be used again on The Muppet Show. But in sketches where Kermit would be reporting from Kuzbane, his reporter's hat would be removed, unless it was on Sesame Street, and I think his trench coat was the same one used on Sesame Street. For this one, it was a darker color and had a fur collar. The male and female Kuzbanian creatures and their babies would be used as accessories for an action figure of Kermit in his reporter outfit from The Muppet Show for Palisades Toys. After the sketch, Mia shares with Wally how much she's enjoying herself, telling him that the Muppets are all such lovely people. Wally notes that George is the only exception as he passes by mopping, very aggressively telling Wally to move. Mia wishes George a happy Valentine's Day, but he brushes it off, stating that love isn't what he's into. But Mia insists that everybody has a little bit of love in them, and she tries to get George to talk to her. But when she touches his mop to get his attention, he snaps at her, which makes Mia realize that George loves his mop. George denies it, but after calling it useful and cute and adding that he and his mop like being together, which is kinda sad, Mia mentions that love is enjoying being with somebody. Or, in George's case, something. This finally makes George feel love, and he calls out to everyone that he loves his mop, leading to the finale, We Got Love, performed by all Muppets, with George even sounding happy to be singing along. Mia sings about being with Thog, and Miss Mousy sings about being with Droop. Even the Kuzbanians and the Crumpet join in. I couldn't help but smile myself, and it all ends with an explosion from Crazy Donald. The special ends with Mia saying goodbye to all of the Muppets. Brewster refers to Mia as Grace, which I'm assuming is an old girlfriend who he mistook Mildred for earlier. Mia even says goodbye to George's mop as Brewster continues to cut in the line just for a kiss and a hug from Mia. Even Rolf the dog and Bert and Ernie make an appearance. Kermit seems a little dissed that Mia acknowledged the other frogs and not him. So how did this become The Muppet Show? For starters, The Muppet Show is known for having celebrity guest hosts every episode, so having Mia Farrow as a celebrity guest is an example of what Jim was thinking about for the show. And most of the musical numbers on the show were pre-existing songs. On Jim Henson's first series, Sam and Friends, the Muppet characters would lip-sync to records, but in the Muppets Valentine Show, the Muppets were performing the songs themselves, which also would later be done on The Muppet Show. The second Muppet Show pilot, Sex and Violence, did not feature any celebrity guests and mostly consisted of sketches, with the only songs in that one being originals that were written exclusively for it. Maybe I'll do a video about that at some point in the future. So that's all I've got to say about the Muppets Valentine Show. I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about it, and I hope that you all have a happy Valentine's Day.